Hello, and welcome to the Wild Wonder podcast, where we seek to demystify and democratize holistic wellness practices by speaking with today's leading practitioners. I'm your host, Kristen Yorka, and joining me today is Susan Padron. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, very good. It's so nice to see you. First of all, this is a totally selfish podcast that I'm doing because I need the style help. But I'm sure if I need it, plenty of people do too, because we've been mostly trapped inside for a year. So I'm sure a lot of us, not just myself, are wondering, who am I right now and what does this person wear? Are you hearing that on your end?
Oh my gosh, 100%. And I mean, you really just hit it like nail on the head with, people just not even knowing who they are anymore, because everyone has been through so much. Obviously, it's like a big spectrum of what everyone has gone through over the last year or more than a year now. Mm-hmm. And your identity has changed. And because your identity has changed so much, your style does too. And I think a lot of people don't always recognize that, or they're not able to recognize it right away because they are just left with looking at their closet and saying, none of this feels right. Like, I don't want to wear any of this, but then they don't know why that is.
Right.
And it really is like a big disconnect that occurs between their own personal identity and their personal style.
Right. I've had so many, well, now that we're getting back outside, right, for a lot of us, we're now just entering the world again. I keep getting up and looking at my closet and I'm like, what? Like, none of this works for me anymore. What have I been wearing? What do I wear? And then the other challenge is I'm like, okay, I'm going to make the effort and go out and get something. And then I spend an hour or 2 hours, or sometimes online hours, just trying to find something, and I'll find maybe 2 or 3 things and I'll end up returning them.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a big struggle that I see with a lot of my clients too. And again, like, I think for a lot of us, some of our bodies might have changed during this time too. And that's another struggle. Like, so it's multifaceted in a lot of ways where, your identity has changed, your body has changed, your lifestyle has changed too, right? Because even though we are starting to venture out into the world again now, it's still different than it was, the last spring, spring of 2019, when we were going out and doing all of the things. So it's just a lot of changes that have occurred and that create a lot of dissonance between what we need, what we want, what we like, and what we have.
Right. The only feeling I can compare this to is having a child.
Yes.
That period of like, okay, you were pregnant for almost a year and now the baby's out. Now your body's different. Your schedule is different. Your whole life is different. Who you are has completely changed. And now you're like, okay, well, what does this person wear?
Yeah, that's a really a great comparison. Probably one of the best that I've heard too, because you're right. It's a lot of the same factors that have come into play here that really just create those issues. And yeah, like you said, your life changed, your body changed, your everything is different. Like when you become a new mom and when you're coming out of a global pandemic.
It's kind of the same kind of stress.
Yeah, a little like, I think putting that into words and actually like hearing that now, I'm like, oh May, like, oh my goodness, that's a strong statement. And I think it's just another one of those moments where like all of us that are moms need to give ourselves like a little bit more credit.
How are we even getting dressed this last year? How did we even like take a bath? No less.
Yeah, for sure. But like,
what I read from your bio was you had a similar epiphany during, when you became a mom, right? That's when you kind of, a lot of us did, myself included, uprooted your life and decided like this life that was no longer works for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a middle school band director, so middle school music teacher for 5.5 years before, or 5 years before my son was born. And then I took a year off to be with my son. And then when I went back to work, I had that epiphany that you're referring to, where I was like, no, this is not working for me. This is not where my priorities are. I can't do this anymore. And my anxiety, all of those inner like emotions and shadow work that I had been kind of like pushing to the side, like, it's fine, everything's fine, just all came to the surface, and I couldn't contain it anymore. It was the worst that my anxiety had ever been. I was having like anxiety attacks like constantly. And I started running because I was like, well, healthy people exercise. Exercise is good for your mental health. And what it became was, if I didn't run every day, then it was like I guaranteed anxiety attack. And it was all surrounding that, that just need for change with myself. Like I was trying to run away from my life. And it wasn't until I really like sat with myself and said, okay, I need to do this I need to do something else, like for myself, to be a better me, to be a better wife, to be a better mom, this little guy, like I need to make some major changes. And that definitely involves changing my career. And, at the time I was in my early 30s, like my husband had just lost his job, which was another reason why I had to go back to work. I had a 1-year-old at home, and to have that realization to say like, okay, gotta completely change careers. It's scary, but it was something that I knew so deep down. The universe, my spirit guides, like my intuition, everything was like, she's getting it. Yes. And thankfully, like styling people has always been something that I've absolutely loved. It's always been part of my life in so many ways. Like when I was old enough to go to the mall with my friends, I would get more excited about picking things out for them than picking things out for myself. And so that's something that I've always done for the people in my life. And when I was still teaching, I remember one of my friends was telling me, she was getting one of those like clothing subscription services at the time. And she was like, well, I like what you pick out for me more than what I get in my monthly box. Like you should work for one of those companies. And I'm stubborn and driven. And I was like, working for somebody else just doesn't feel good. But personal styling and doing that on my own sounds amazing. So that was like my light bulb moment where I just dove in.
And how do you really go from band teacher to personal stylist?
I started researching a lot of online certification programs, something that I could do while I was still teaching full time, still had a little guy, still a mom to a toddler at the time. And so I needed to do something or be able to do something simultaneously. So I started taking online courses. I reached out to and found a mentor who is a personal stylist in New York who teaches at FIT while also runs her own business. And doing all of those things together really helped me to launch my business. And I just dove in.
So in essence, you really rediscovered your passion, and then just looked for anything having to do with that passion. I mean, to put it really simply, you just honed in on this one thing that you really wanted.
Exactly. And what I did is I really channeled anytime I had like a bad day at work or I was frustrated about something at work, like when I was teaching, I made a point to, instead of like harping on that and being focused on how miserable I was like, okay, I'm going to take that and I'm going to direct it towards doing something to grow my personal styling business. And whether it was a social media post, a blog post, reaching out to potential clients, like whatever it was, I was like, I'm going to take that energy, I'm going to transmute it, and I'm going to put it towards what I really want. And that, I think, was the biggest help in really being able to leave teaching and pursue personal styling full time. Because I was able to just, from the time that I started my business, it took about 1.5 years to be able to leave teaching and just go at it full time.
That's not a whole lot of time either.
Part of it was I got to a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't go back. Like I need to give my notice. And I really, at the time, I just needed the okay from my husband, not because I needed his permission, but because we're a team. We're very much a partnership, very equal. And I wanted to make sure that, because it was a decision that was very important to me, but I also wanted to make sure that I wasn't just doing this for me, or he didn't view it that way. I wanted him to be part of the decision making. So as soon as I was like, I need to do this, but I also need you to say that it's okay.
Right.
And I need to give my notice at work before July 1st. And it was like the end of June. So I was like, okay, clock's ticking. We got to do this now. Thanks. And then, my husband was like, all right, yeah, go for it. So I gave my notice, and it was so freeing and wonderful. And, the entrepreneurial journey has been challenging, but having a lot of like the spiritual elements brought into that has been a huge element of support too, in a lot of ways. So yeah.
But it seems like I always view if there's two kinds of people in the world, right? Those that are driven by what they don't want to do, and those that are driven by what they do want to do. And it sounds like from your story that you're driven from a sense of desire.
Yes.
Versus a sense of doom, like what can happen if. Yeah,
definitely. Because I've battled a lot with anxiety and depression over the years, I've done a lot of work to be aware of that and be very conscious of my outlook, whether it's on day-to-day things or, big picture things. And really, it was when I became pregnant with my son that I started to really make that mental shift and that mindset shift, because I was pregnant, I was growing this tiny human, and I was aware that even my emotional state could impact him, like for any pregnant person, like that's just how it goes. So it was, I think, part of that journey with like being pregnant allowed me to shift my mindset, and then created a really beautiful foundation for how I could then do things more just for myself and my business. And, it's something that I constantly still work on, but it definitely started then, I think.
What are the tools that you leaned on then versus the tools that you lean on now?
Well, so back then, spirituality and my connection to spirituality has definitely evolved, where it was very present during my childhood. And then I think like a lot of spiritual individuals, I got scared by a lot of my gifts, and I shut it down. Like, nope, don't like this, not comfortable with it, done. Just coming from that fear space. And so when I was pregnant with my son, it was more just being conscious of how I looked at things, how I processed my emotions. When certain situations would come up, like thinking about how I could process it. Like, of course, if something, if I got angry or frustrated or whatever it was, like acknowledging the emotion, but then not letting it absorb into my body, not letting it stay, right? Like witnessing it, acknowledging it, seeing where it's coming from, but then saying, okay, like, here's what we're going to do about it.
Right.
Here's what's within my control. Here's what's not. What's not within my control, I need to release. And what is within my control, I need to figure out what I want to do about it. So that was a big part of it. And that's something that I still utilize now quite a bit. But now that I have become much more in touch with my spirituality, with my spiritual gifts, through a lot of incredible spiritual mentors, I am much more aware of the messages that I receive from my spiritual team, right? Like my guides, my the universe, whatever, my like the different totem animals that I have connections to, and looking for the messages that are there and the best messages that I'm supposed to receive. And I'm more aware too of like cleansing my energetic body, utilizing different smudging tools, or taking baths with a variety of like different types of salts to just, again, like cleanse. And when I feel like something's beyond my control, seeking out other people to help me with it. So whether it's acupuncture, Reiki, or other types of energy work, to just help get some of that stuck energy to move on its way.
We all need assistance now and then.
Absolutely. And to be able to acknowledge like when you need that assistance, when it's like beyond your abilities, or just when you just need to ask for help because you're fried or you're just, beyond
to be able to give that to yourself. I think it's so difficult for some of us and a lot of us women to be able to like be like, okay, I can't handle this, and I would like to be in the position to receive now.
Yes, definitely. And I know when I first started styling, touching clothes and being with people, it's that constant energetic exchange. And for a while, I didn't realize that. And I was completely unaware of every bit of energy that I was taking on from other people.
Right.
And it wasn't until, I started working with different spiritual mentors that they were like, so what do you do to, like release that and to cleanse it? It's like, what do you mean? And they were like, you're touching like their clothes, they're sharing so much like of their emotions, they're being so vulnerable with you, like how are you releasing that? And I was like I don't know. And they were like, oh no, they're like, are you getting headaches? And I was like, they're like the back of your neck. And I was like, so all of these things where it's like check. And so then I learned all of these different tools and skills with creating energetic boundaries to just, and also energetic releasing too, so that I wasn't, similar to what I was talking about earlier about witnessing the emotions that were coming up for me when I was dealing with some of those hard situations and then letting them go. I've had to do the same thing from an energetic perspective with the clients that I work with, holding space for them, allowing them to share their most vulnerable selves with me on so many levels. And then also at the end of our sessions together, being able to release it. And, and then of course, helping them to transmute that along the way, but not continuing to just let it become part of me and then turning into some kind of physical ailment or emotional.
Can you walk us through maybe one of the exercises you do for yourself to kind of transmute or expel this energy?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually really simple. After every single client that I see in person, whether it's a closet session that we do together or an at-home shopping session that we do, whenever I see clients in person, I always make sure at the conclusion of it, like after I leave, I'll stop somewhere and I'll go to the restroom to wash my hands. And while I'm washing my hands, obviously it's, like I'm touching like a lot of clothes. So there's like the germ factor, whatever. Right. That's not really about. It's more like washing my hands and setting the intention of releasing any emotions or any energy that is not mine, as well as releasing whatever I need to. And setting the intention of, cleansing my hands as like cleansing my entire body, and then having the water washing it all down the drain, releasing it back into the universe. So
simple, and it sounds so important, because there's so many situations that we just drift from one space into another, whether we're working or with friends or family.
Yeah.
And we just carry it with us all day long.
Exactly. And it's something too that also just helps me to kind of like close that chapter of the day, right? Like closing that time with that client, and then being able to open it back up when we have our next session together. But it's all about like setting the intentions while creating energetic boundaries and all of those pieces that work really well together, that allow me to do what I do, while also helping to not only just take care of my clients, but take care of myself as well.
Right. And then you really create a container for them and for you and for the experience, which ritualizes the whole thing and makes it much more powerful. So I want to talk about, you describe your work as an intuitive stylist. And I would like for you to describe what intuitive styling means.
Yeah, absolutely. So I include the term intuitive stylist because I find that it's so important for my clients that work with me to know that it's anything that they're sharing with me, or anything that they're not directly verbalizing to share with me, is out there, right? Like it's all things that I'm picking up on that, whether it's their guides or the universe or my guides, they're all working together to be able to pull information so that I can help my clients become the best version of themselves and to help them rediscover who they are on this beautiful journey that they're on, because they reached out to me for a reason. And usually they're at some point in their lives where they're going through a bit of transformation, and to have someone who's intuitive allows them to do that and transform in a really safe way, where I'm guided to ask them questions that allow them to share, or allow them to start thinking about different ideas or different aspects of themselves that they haven't been able to do on their own, but that help them to discover who they are now, and also to honor who they were and hold space for that person, but then and figure out what elements of their past are continuing to be there to support who they are now in their journey, and what parts of themselves that they need to release and kind of detach themselves from and let go, so that they can continue to grow and become expansive and just, fly on their journey.
Right, because it's not the idea of like throwing out the baby with the bathwater, right? We're not like, oh, new year, new me.
No, it's really not. It's, I know that a lot of us probably have seen different makeover shows where the hosts will throw away everything in their closet. Like, this is all garbage. Like, you can't show me any of this. So the poor person is left completely traumatized by the fact that all of their clothes and everything they associated with themselves has just been removed from their lives, right? They're basically told, like, the way you are in this moment is not okay. And you need to become a different person. And that's not what I'm about,
Right.
because it's not fair. And how can anyone be expected to make positive changes for themselves that can last long term when someone does something like that?
Because wouldn't it then feel like a costume? Somebody gave me this new look to put on.
Exactly. And that's something else that I try to avoid with my clients as well. It's very much a partnership where I'm there to guide them, to help them learn how they want to express themselves. I can't stand any of the dress for your body type, or, traditional styling tips like that, because, and what's taken me time to learn too, is that just because someone has a specific body type, or just because you think someone has a great part of their body, does not mean that they feel that way about themselves.
Right.
And so it's so important for me to be able to listen to my clients and to really pay attention to what they love about themselves and help them discover what they love about themselves so that you can help them highlight that.
Right.
And rather than focusing on, oh, well, I hate this part of my body, so I really want to make sure that we hide that part. Like, we don't do that. I have a zero tolerance policy for my clients talking negatively about themselves or their bodies. I'm like, no. And I make them reframe it right then and there in that moment. And that's part of the healing too. Absolutely. Because a lot of what I do with my clients on a lot of different ways is a lot of healing. And, healing of trauma, of, all of these different views that they've had of themselves, limiting beliefs that they have created for themselves of, what they don't feel like they're capable of achieving or doing or wearing. Right. And I'm there as their personal stylist, spiritual cheerleader, just being like, no, you want to wear that? We're going to wear that. We're doing it now. Yeah. No excuses. If this is what you want, we're doing it.
And I remember there's so many cultural messages too, to what especially women should and should not wear, especially as women grow older. I remember being 25 and a friend saying, oh, we're 25 now. We can't wear crop tops. I was like, we can't wear crop tops because we're 25? Is that a thing?
No, it's not a thing, because I am 35 and I love a crop top. And I have clients who are older than I am who I will style in crop tops because, if that's how they feel good about themselves and if that's what they want to rock, you better believe I'm going to help them put a fabulous outfit together where they feel incredible in it. And so that's a lot of what I do is unconventional in terms of what I think most people have as preconceived notions about personal stylists. It's not so much of what you should do or should wear or shouldn't wear. It's more about discovery of the self, figuring out what really lights you up inside so that you can present yourself as the most incredible version of who you are. So you can tackle the rest of your life, right? Because once you feel confident, once you feel good, everything else just becomes so much easier.
A good outfit can change everything. And I know some people will argue that styling isn't spiritual, but I beg to differ because it could change how you feel about yourself, how you walk through the world, how you're able to interact with others. It does a lot for a person.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think too, I've noticed with myself, especially, that certain colors that I gravitate towards on a given day, if I kind of reconnect more with myself and my chakras, I'll notice that there are certain chakras that need a little bit more attention that day. And surprise, surprise, it's also being reflected in the color that I chose, or where I'm feeling really connected to is being brought out within the color that I'm wearing. I'm sharing a lot from my heart space, with this podcast. So I'm in green, how funny that should work out that way.
And then would you agree also that we can use color to engage or uplift some of these areas or chakras where we may be imbalanced?
Definitely, because it's kind of like a little subtle reminder for yourself throughout the day, right? I remember when I got out of an energy session once, or at the conclusion of it, I was having a lot of difficulty with my solar plexus during that energy session. And so I remember the practitioner that I saw suggested that I spend the rest of my day seeking out and looking for anything yellow. And whenever I saw something yellow, she really wanted me to take like a good deep belly breath to open up and like loosen the tension in my solar plexus to then help rebalance everything that was there. And I think that by choosing colors to wear in a very similar way, you can do that for yourself.
Right. Or objects. I always think of like certain clothing, or especially jewelry for me. I hold them as talismans. Like, have my, my ring from Bologna, which I love, my grandmother's bracelet. Like, they always have to have real meaning for me throughout the day, something I want to embody or something I want to be more of throughout the day.
Yes, absolutely. A lot of the jewelry that I wear have crystals in them. And I've noticed that when I'm going into a day where I need to feel more grounded, like I have these hoops that have red jasper attached to them. And I'm like, okay, that's what I need. Or when I need to feel a little bit more gentle with myself or gentle with the people I'm going to be encountering, then my rose quartz pieces tend to be calling to me a little bit more. So yeah, I think even if you don't have a lot of crystal pieces, just being aware of what clothes and accessories are kind of calling to you in that way when you're thinking about getting dressed. It's usually doing that for a reason. Like somebody on your spirit team is saying like, hey, you need this today. Yeah. And it's okay to listen to that. And because it's definitely happening for a reason, happening for a specific purpose.
It's definitely uplifted my mood through this pandemic. I think in the beginning, a lot of us were like, okay, now I don't have to get dressed anymore. Now I'm just going to sit around in my shorts. But I realized halfway through, I was like, no, I want to wear, some days I would wear a long dress, a long floral dress. I was like, I want to be in this like romantic mood today. And this can help because I'm not leaving this 1,000 square feet.
Yeah, exactly. It really does make a difference. I know that when I've experienced times where I'm not feeling really great emotionally, that like you just described, putting together an outfit that uplifts my spirits a little bit definitely helps me to feel less stuck in that funk. I think that it can be tricky because you don't want to go too extreme. You don't want to like put on a super fancy dress and be like, everything's fine. Like, look how great I am. When you're like, I'm going to fall apart. Like, it's going to fall apart.
Look good.
Because there's too much of a disconnect, of like a major contrast. But finding that balance where it's a little bit closer to how you're feeling, just like a little bit happier, you're like, okay, yeah, I went like up a notch in my mood, and that's important.
I actually discovered your work because my friend and astrologer Amber Astronauta did your challenge, and she was so enjoying it. And she's like, you wouldn't even believe it. Like, it seems silly, but we're getting dressed up for each other, and it does shift my entire day.
Yes. Oh, I love Amber, and I loved all of her outfits. I was actually like bummed when the challenge was over because she incorporated so much joy and her real like personality into each day. And I always looked forward to it every morning. It's like, I can't wait for Amber to tag me. But yeah, that's what it's about. Like that was such a big point of the challenge that I was providing for these women, is just giving them these different style prompts to help them to kind of just think about different ways that they can express themselves. And, we did one day where it was a quiet expression of yourself versus a loud expression of yourself, and the difference between the two. So a quiet expression is just pulling in like a subtle detail or something that is still connecting to you, but isn't like, hey, I'm Susan, I'm here, like, check me out, like, it's like, hey, I'm Susan, I'm going to be drinking my coffee over there, like getting some work done. But the reason that it's important to have those, to know how to bring in that quiet expression, is for those days where you don't want to get dressed. You're just like, ugh, I want to wear comfy clothes. I don't want to talk to people. But if you can have something that still is that little connection to your sense of self, it helps you to maintain your identity and your connection to who you are, even on those low days. So then when you go for your days where you're feeling great and it's like a loud expression of yourself, then those are the days that you're going to be like pulling in your people, like the people that you love that you don't even know yet are going to be coming up to you and connecting with you just because of what you're wearing. And it's going to be a much more genuine connection because there are all these elements of yourself that you're representing. It's so cool.
But I imagine that's also difficult for some women, especially because I remember when I was starting out as a private yoga teacher, women would come to me and say, I would be like, okay, well, why are you here? What is it we're trying to do together? And I'd be like, I don't know. And I'd be like, okay. And I would be like trying to pull out maybe some information about who they are, or at least who they aspire to be. And there was just this lost connection where they really didn't know. So I imagine a lot of your work revolves around getting women to connect with who they are.
Exactly. Absolutely. And whenever I have that first connection with a new client, we have our first phone call, I always get them talking about themselves. I'm like, tell me about you. Like, tell me about you. And for a lot of people, that's a really daunting task. They're like, what do you want to know? I'm like, everything, whatever you want to tell me. And I just hold space for them. And for some people, they're like, and they'll tell me like their whole life story. Some people will tell me like, a very small portion. Like it's so cool to see what comes up, and it's all helpful for me. And it gives me so much insight into how we're going to create the path to finding their style. And then when we go through their closet together during our first session, that is really where so much of their identity comes out, because they'll just naturally talk about their clothes. They'll talk about the pieces that they love, the pieces that they hate. And I'm like, okay, tell me why, whether it's a piece that you love or a piece that you hate, I want to hear why. And sometimes the pieces that they hate, it's like, I hate this because, it reminds me of my ex, and I wore this during, whatever that comes up. And it's like, okay, so there's negative energy attached to that because of the negative memory association. We need to release that. But then we need to dive a little bit deeper into like the actual clothing item itself. It's like, okay, well, do you just hate this because of the memories and the energy attached to it, or do you hate the style of it too? Or like the same thing with the pieces that they love. Is it a memory? Is it an energy? Is it a feeling that they get when they wear it? Or is it, the color, the texture, the fabric, like breaking all that down. And I kind of have this like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like an epic flow chart, I guess, that goes on in my brain of like questions and then directions, and then kind of goes from there. But
so can we do a little exercise before we go? So I'll be selfish again. Like, let's say I am your client and I'm meeting you for the first time. We won't go into my whole background, but if we could do like an abridged version of how you would lead me through the initial steps of the process.
Yeah. So, okay. So you want to know more just about like how we work together, or?
Yeah, maybe a quick example of like maybe some questions you would ask me to get to know what my style is when I don't even know what my style is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then I would love to know actually why you chose to wear what you're wearing today. We're on video, we're recording an episode of your podcast and also for YouTube. So what made you choose that outfit today?
Well, I would be a liar if I said I wasn't trying to wear something put together for you. So that was one. It was also a dress I recently got that I really loved because I loved the feel and I love black. It also, it reminds me of clothes I usually wear if I'm like in Spain or Italy. So it makes me feel, I don't know, cosmopolitan. And also I recently wore it and my husband really loved it. So I thought that was sweet. So it makes me feel good. And that's really it.
Yeah, so it sounds like, you chose the dress because it really helps you to connect with some of your femininity from like that divine feminine, as well as that freedom too, because you said it reminds me of pieces that you wear when you travel to Italy and to Spain. So there's that sense of a way to connect with yourself in a different way when you're traveling to those places than when you're here. So there's the positive memory, there's that sense of freedom, that femininity, describing the way that it feels too, and how it's comfortable. And, you also want to feel like, you use the word cosmopolitan, so you wanted to feel a bit more chic and put together, and that you love black as well. So are there other colors that you tend to gravitate towards? Because this isn't just black, like it's black, but it has like, is that
some white and beige, I guess.
Yeah,
so it's like floral.
Yeah, a really pretty like floral pattern. It's a small in size in terms of the pattern. So it's not something that's like really bold and vibrant and crazy, but it's still something that isn't just a solid color. It's bringing in some, again, connecting those pieces of like the femininity as well as that sense of freedom. Because when you think about like walking through different cities, or even like more of the rustic areas of Italy and Spain, there's so much beautiful floral, like fields of flowers, depending on where you are. And I can see how you would have that connection to all of those ideas within that dress as well.
I hadn't considered it, but you said something interesting with the patterns. I tend towards black as the base color with floral prints in some way, whether they're large floral prints or smaller. So that's interesting. If I were to go through my closet right now, that's probably 3/4 of it.
Interesting. So do you tend to wear other colors aside from like predominantly black, or is black more of a go-to for you?
Predominantly black, with some pattern, usually black and white stripes. What else? Maybe some yellow I'll throw in there. But otherwise, usually the other color is secondary in most of my clothes.
So when black is predominantly a base, that can kind of go in different directions. But what you were describing about, black and white stripes, or black predominantly with like floral patterns and mostly like neutrals as well, or like incorporating like a yellow, I'm definitely feeling more of like a classic style, like something that's timeless, right? Rather than something that's overly trendy or like just in the moment. It sounds like the pieces that you tend to gravitate towards are more versatile, like pieces that can last for years, rather than like you wear it once, it's really memorable, and then you're over it. It's more like, okay, like I can wear this when I'm recording an episode. I can wear this when I'm out on a date with my husband because he really likes it too. And like, that makes me feel sexy and strong. And I like that. Or I can wear it when I can travel again, which is so exciting.
Hopefully soon. This is also a talisman to get me onto a plane.
Love it. Yes. Like, let's bring in that energy, that all those healthy, like safe travel vibes for sure.
Right.
So hearing all of that, does that feel like it resonates with how you tend to gravitate towards style?
Absolutely. Nail on the head, which was funny because I had downloaded your questions from your website where you first started out. And it was kind of daunting at first. I was like, I need to meditate on this. I really need to try to figure this out. But basically in 2 minutes, you described my entire wardrobe.
Oh, that's awesome.
And you're right. It is the more classic style. I like to think of everything really as like heirlooms, or like I gravitate toward vintage pieces that could last a long time. I always think of like passing it down or gifting it, but I'm not the type that's going to like go toward the trend to then give it away or throw it away.
Yeah. Yeah. I love vintage pieces, like good vintage. It just, it like resonates with my soul in a different way. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I love to shop, but like whenever I find like a good vintage store, I'm like, oh, I just want all of it. Like it just, yeah, I feel like 60s, 70s, and like a little bit of 80s stuff is where I gravitate the most in terms of the vintage. But
I even found a 20s dress the other day that I'm obsessed with.
Oh, just send me a picture of it. I'd love to see it. But that like you gravitating towards pieces from the 20s too. Again, like it's that classic, like elegant feminine vibe that I feel like is really a beautiful way to describe your style aesthetic. That's just it's very aligned. You're welcome.
That's beautiful. And I could see how a person, because it didn't take us very long to get there. But if I had to describe my style myself to someone, I wouldn't have gotten there that fast.
Yeah. And it's funny, like when we were talking about how that first phone call goes when I'm speaking with a client, it's rare that I ever ask them about their style. And it's for exactly the reason that you just described, where it's really hard for people to describe how they like to dress or what they like to wear and describe it in a way that is cohesive, right? Yeah. Or like they might not know. They might be like, I like this top because it's comfortable. Right. Like, but then even finding out, like, okay, well, what does like, how is it comfortable? Is it the cut of it? Is it the fabric? Like, breaking all that down. That's what I do. And again, it's
great. It's also so important to know because I once did a post about me trying to go shopping because I was a dancer forever. So other people dress us, and we don't really have ever developed our style. We're basically born in tights. So I sometimes feel that when I go into a store, I'm thinking to myself, what would this character wear? You know? And to think of it in terms of like, oh, this character or myself actually loves this type of clothing for these reasons, because they make me feel like this, or because they look in this way, or because they're enduring, that changes it. And then I feel like I wouldn't fall victim to fashion, in other words, because recently with that whole, I don't know what generation they are, LMNOP TikTok thing where they were saying that us millennials wear certain clothes, right? The tight jeans and the tank top. And I was like, do I? And of course I'm like going through my closet and I'm trying. And then I tried, this is how ridiculous I am. I actually tried to wear some of the more fashionable clothes of today, or what the kids are wearing. And I was like, nope. This is not me at all.
And that's okay. Like it's okay to know that about yourself. And the way that I like to compare clothes to, I think it's really rare that there's one style of anything that is off limits for anyone, right? Like the way that I kind of look at it is it's more like food. Okay. Like if you tried pizza once and you were like, I hate this, I hate pizza. Like it's not necessarily about the pizza. It's about that one pizza that you tried. Yeah. So sometimes it's about finding the right restaurant, finding the right type of pizza. Like with clothes, it might be finding the right store, finding the right size, like the right style of that garment to help you to embrace it. And you might just not like pizza. Like it could just be like, I've tried it a bunch of times. It is not for me. Like I don't like it. And that happens. But for the most part, I think if it's something that you're like, but I really want to like pizza, then we just try to find the right restaurant. Like,
I love how you zeroed in that, into that subtlety, because you're right. Because if not, we get stuck in our uniform, especially as a mom, our mom uniforms. So we're going to wear our skinny jeans and our black V-neck shirts, and we're going to just like live this way forever. But it is worth trying the new pieces or the new things that come out and the new trends in a way that feels right for you.
Yeah. And if it's something that you want to do, like if you're like, no, I'm not interested, then it's fine. Like you carry on living your life. It's no big deal. But, if it's something that appeals to you, then like allow yourself to experiment and to play and try it out.
To have fun.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm so happy you came. We could probably continue talking forever, but I don't want to monopolize your time. And I do want everyone to learn more about your work. So if you could share with us where they can find you and what you're up to, that would be great.
Absolutely. So Instagram is where I am the most active. My handle is Susan Padron _stylist. As well as my blog, which is on my website, susanpadronstylist.com. And I also have a new book coming out, which I am beyond excited about.
I'm a big book fan.
Yeah, thank you. It's available for pre-order now, and it'll be available where books are sold on June 15th. And the title of the book is... Thank you. The title is We Don't Do Just Okay Anymore. So
love it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for being here and for sharing your wisdom with us. I know our listeners have gotten so much from this. So thanks again.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, I hope we talk soon. I'll see you and I'll let you get on with your day.
Thank you. All right. Take care.
And that was the Wild Wonder podcast. I am so thankful that you're here with us. I just loved our conversation with Susan Padron. She's just a ray of sunshine. And I don't know about you, I got a lot out of that. Now I know exactly what my style is. If you liked this episode, please comment. Let us know what you liked about it. If you're listening to the audio version, please hit follow and leave us a review. 5 stars, please. And if you're on YouTube, again, remember to subscribe and hit the little bell so you get alerts. This podcast is brought to you by our generous Patreon patrons. You can support us on patreon.com/wildwonder. And you could visit us anytime at wearewildwonder.com. See you soon.